Dave and I will be sharing our insights with you today about diversity within the social care workforce. This is an interesting and very important topic. So you might be asking yourselves, why are we the right people to listen to? Both Dave and I, like the rest of the team at Cohesion, are social care specialists. We understand the intricacies of recruitment and the values required in this specialist sector. We work across both large and small providers in all care settings, and we use data, research, and lots of evidence to support the recommendations that we make. We're also Care England and NCF partners. On a day-to-day basis, what we actually do is improve the recruitment and retention results for social care providers. We offer fully outsourced recruitment campaigns, which could be compliance related, early careers related, project related, or retention related. And we also offer agency and bank management because we understand the risks and necessities of temporary staff and can manage recruitment agency exposure. So to bring that to life, here's an example. I'm going to let you look at what we achieved for Signature recently. I think we might have a cut. Well, we definitely had some of the Signature team sign up. So hi, everyone, if you're here. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Hi, you are there. Brilliant. I can't see everyone on the list. I'm glad you could make it. Okay, that's my ad over. I'm going to go back to diversity now, everyone. What is diversity? And what is our diversity within the sector? There are so many areas that we could focus on, but we haven't got nearly enough time today. So what we are looking at today is where the biggest opportunities are for all of you. So for social care providers, where are the opportunities? The reality is that the UK social care workforce isn't very diverse. A few quick headlines now to support that statement. Less than 10% are under 25, so we don't have very many young people. Less than 20% of the frontline workforce are men, so we don't have very many men in the workforce. And less than 30% are over 55. And only 2% consider themselves disabled. However, we need to clarify that many disabled people don't consider themselves so. And in addition, we're quite disappointed we couldn't find any overall sector data on people with learning disabilities in the workforce. Now, most of those statistics haven't moved in as many years as we've been reviewing them. And Dave and I have been working together for 17 years. So we've had our eyes on them for quite a while now. One area that the sector is in line with the rest of the UK economy, though, is in terms of nationality. So approximately 20% of the UK workforce is non-British born origin. And therein, we're in that point, we are in line. I guess our point here is that social care recruitment is challenging. We all know that. And with the potential of more than a quarter of the workforce potentially retiring in the next 10 years and a low number of young people joining, we are in dire need of future-proofing strategies. Dire need. We already have vacancies that are in the six figures. We have low numbers of young people, and there is still an exodus in the sector for a variety of reasons, which we'll explore. I feel like in setting the scene, I'm in a bad cop role, but the truth is we are in a pretty bleak situation if we choose to do nothing. So I'm going to cover off what is important to different groups and also where are your opportunities. So the single biggest opportunity to fill some of those unfilled jobs is by increasing the number of Gen Z or under 25s in your workforce. Gen Z want to know that they're working for an organisation that delivers social value. In a recent survey, 90% of 5,000 candidates surveyed said that the EDI policies of organisations they were considering working for was a key factor in their decision-making. We should all be excellent at this, right? Social care organisations deliver social value, and yet turnover of Gen Z in the social care workforce is a whopping 50%. And while the UK unemployment rate is around 4%, unemployment for under 25s is 12.8. And if we look at London, just as one area in the country, it's a whopping 20%. In addition to that, we've got 20% of the working age population overall in the UK economically inactive. So I've set another grim scene there. So let's talk about what's actually influencing young people. Times have changed. Young people now are much more influenced by their parents than they were last generation, 10, 20 years ago. And that isn't surprising, given that they're less socially confident than in comparison to previous generations. If you look at their education experience, they've paid tuition fees, had the removal of maintenance grants. This has made going to university more fiscally challenging. And so as parents are bankrolling their children more than ever in the past, they have much more of a vested interest in their decision-making. So more than ever before, young people are staying at home while studying, and their first jobs after education are much more likely to be local than in the past. And in fact, at Cohesion, we run early career programs across all sectors. It's much more challenging to fill an early careers program now, where there is a requirement for either rotation or relocation, mainly due to the high cost of living. However, this actually presents us with an opportunity. And when I say us, I mean all of us, I mean the sector. More young people need to work while studying. Cohesion completed a study with Harlow College students studying health and social care. And very few of those students, we spoke to about 200, very few of them were able to secure part-time work in a social care setting, even when they were studying relevant subjects and wanted to work in the sector. Some of the cohort that we engaged with were planning other related careers, such as nursing or social work, which presents us with an opportunity for positive pass through the sector. They told us that they wanted to work part-time during term time and full-time in the holidays, which would give them an excellent preview of the sector. We could make some of those people sticky. We could keep some of them. A great way of future-proofing and injecting flexibility into your workforce when permanent staff take leave as well. If you think about the summer holidays, you have students who want to work full-time, and you have your full-time staff who want to take time off to be with their children or families. And of course, there's an investment required to train them, but the benefit of, let's just say 2 to 5 years of positive pass-through far outweigh the upfront investments. And we also need to bear in mind that there are less 18-year-olds than ever before, about 100,000 less each year. So it's really important to engage with them, because we are in competition with other industries, and they are targeting people younger and younger. So young people want to hear from people like them. They want to hear about other young people in your workforce, similar in age. They want to know what their experience was. So if you can bring that to life, that's the kind of thing that will engage them. Let's talk about older people. So generationally, baby boomers have a very strong work ethic. They're very focused on the quality of their work and enjoying work. It really matters to older people. And they're also looking for flexible working, particularly working part-time is very important. And they want that flexibility so that they can prioritize both their own health and support any caring responsibilities that they might have. They want to know that the organisation they're working for has occupational health support. And after all, we're all living longer, and the right support is a really important factor in the longevity of employment. However, many older workers don't feel that their contribution is valued. And sadly, 1 in 10 older people report experiencing age discrimination. So a couple of top tips. It's really important to support older workers post-redundancy. There's a lot of studies out there. I'm going to reference a few of them later, but there is interest in making the switch from other industries, both in terms of moving industry entirely and in terms of their roles. So do consider local business news where other companies might be making redundancies. It's a great point of connection. Factually, again, just tapping into some of the data out there, like the recent Demos reports and Platinum Pound, factually, it's much harder for people to find work after 50 and post redundancy. So now on to men. Let's talk about men. We've got men, we have older men, and then we've got Men Z, which is a phrase that Dave and I coined, which of course means younger men. And actually, whilst those demographics are underrepresented, they're really quite similar. And traditionally, the sector is female orientated. What's really required in engagement, in attraction, and during the recruitment process is myth busting. Now, we've got a great TikTok teaser on the screen, which Dave's going to talk about later. But what is important to men? They want to understand what's on offer. They want to help others. They want to make a difference. And they want to work in a friendly environment without negative stereotypes. So, for example, men are no good at caring and they don't have empathy. It's nonsense. They do. So everyone needs to respect that in the internal teams and not think they don't belong here. Needs to be a really inclusive environment for any underrepresented group coming into your workforce and your close-knit teams. They also want to know, like most other groups, where they can get to in the organization, how their role can progress, regardless of their age or backgrounds. Let's talk about disabilities and learning disabilities. Employers' policies and practices regarding EDI, it really, it continues to influence candidates. 90% talking about the same survey now found it important, and half feel very strongly about it in a recent survey of 5,000 candidates by JobTrain. And we also know that greater diversity increases performance beyond the median in the industry that you operate in, according to McKinsey. And yet, only 5% of people with learning disabilities are in work, and only 30% of autistic adults are in any kind of paid employment. People with learning disabilities want meaningful paid work. I have to give a big thumbs up to the amazing work that CIC, Dimensions, HFT, and other learning disability providers do to inform the general public and to advocate for the thousands of people that they support and their families throughout their lives. Some really fantastic recent studies out there. But how can we make work more accessible to someone with learning disabilities, for example? There's actually quite a few things that we can do, and I'm going to just touch on it now. So consider what roles could be appropriate. Doesn't have to be a frontline role. It might be a role in your support team. It might be a role in the kitchen. It might be a role in housekeeping. There's lots of help and training and support out there for organizations looking to bring people into their workforce with a disability or a learning disability. And you can also explore with your supply chain how they might be able to help to support somebody in their realm of work, maybe somebody that you support. But there are a number of things that we can all do to support them in the recruitment process, and lots of changes you can make to onboarding and beyond, such as make your ads really clear and the job description simple and accurate. Something that is often quoted in the latest best practice for recruiting people with learning disabilities, for example, is strong teamwork skills. It's a common requirement. It sits on most JDs, but is it really necessary at the same level for all roles? For example, if you had a role in the kitchen preparing food, those kind of statements can be really off-putting for somebody who is neurodiverse. So our advice would be really explicit rather than generic. And consider a different, more supported recruitment process, perhaps where questions are given ahead of time in order to remove the anxiety. Prepare candidates as much as you can verbally and in writing on things like how to find you and what to expect on the day. You might also choose to make accommodations for somebody who might have a little bit more of a patchy career history if perhaps they weren't supported in their last role in the way that they required. When onboarding, create a jargon handbook and take time to understand individuals' challenges and strengths. So that's just a flavour from us today. But there, as I said, there is an increasing amount of literature and guidance on the subject, and really encourage your recruitment teams to digest and implement appropriately. I'm going to hand over to Dave now, who's going to introduce our data findings.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Good morning, everybody. So as you probably guessed from hearing Amanda already, here at Cohesion, we use data, we use research, we use evidence to support all of the recommendations we make, and that allows us to improve and prove the work that we deliver. Now, one part of our data here at Cohesion set includes responses from candidates who have completed equality and diversity monitoring as part of the application process. Sure, like yours, candidates can opt out or choose not to complete the questionnaire, but we do see some good uptake and responses. So we've been able to look at a cross-section of our data. What I'm referring to today is made up of nearly 15,000 applications made across a couple of years. And this allows us, looking at that sort of level of data, it really allows us to consider within social care, who applies, who's successful, where do the underrepresented groups fall out of the process. And if we know that, we can then work on what we can do to appropriately intervene and make some changes. So we're going to kick off with sharing some of the data with you. I'm going to start with gender first of all. So as a reminder, we've already talked about the sector being made up of 81% identifying as female, less than 20%, so 19% male. So some of the data we are seeing. Well, in our data, we receive applications made up of 30% men and 70% female. So for us, we actually do see a greater number of men applying, which is really encouraging to see. By the time we get to an interview stage, we can start to see a shift in that. So more female applicants are booked and less men are booked, so 25%. And then if we move on again later in the process, when we get to the offer stage, there's another shift. So 21% of offers are made to men. So as well as more applications from men than the overall workforce, we've been running a candidate survey right across social care, not just for organisations that we work with, but we've been running a survey across applicants to care for over 5 years now, thousands and thousands of responses. And it's positively year on year telling us that we are receiving more engagement from men. So if I think about back in 2018, responses were about 20%. If we look at it more recently, we're already 26, 27, 28%. So we're seeing that incremental improvement in terms of engagement in our surveys to people applying to care too. We've actually had our highest increases by 36 to 45-year-old males. Now, what the results also tell us in that survey is that actually the primary concern for this target group is that a lot of the time, the perception, no surprises here, is that care jobs for men in that primary group is somewhat seen as unskilled, that there's poor prospects in care. So I know as a sector, we do a lot of this, but the more we can do that individually with organisations, the better. Something for us to help address is that sharing of myth busting that with our applicant pools specifically, so specifically for men. So definitely in our data, we're seeing more men interested, but absolutely as we move through the recruitment process, the dial is changing. And it absolutely, in my view, suggests that as a sector, we need to focus those efforts on making sure that we are supporting men differently during the recruitment process. So what are we doing to target men? Big part of converting more men in the recruitment process comes from actually attracting more in the first place. Remember that 80-20 workforce and 70-30 split application numbers. So how do others do this? Well, from all the searching online and the examples we wanted to come armed and share with you today, actually there's a heavy focus on social care and what we're doing to attract men rather than out of sector, which is great. But I wanted to share some of that with you today. We'll come on to Ben in a moment, but in the early years space, so nurseries, early year education, there's a network known as Mighty Men in the Early Years, run by the Fatherhood Institute, and it's a national network and a campaign which works to bring more men into the early years education space. And the crucial bit, as you'll hear us say, for all of our underrepresented groups, they also do a lot to support men once they're in that particular sector and in that role too. Just to signpost, really, the Mighty website has some really good resources. So employers in that sector can sign up to a charter, yes, but they can also access tools for careers advisors and there's tools for employers as well. So they've got things like guides to recruiting men. They've got some case studies. So they talk about using appropriate wording in job adverts to help build that picture of inclusion. They use wording that's free of gender. They talk about, they don't coin it this, but it's what we know in our sector as values-based recruitment, which is great. They've got videos of men and women practitioners talking to camera about their roles. So some examples available for you to check out. We all know Skills for Care have lots of resources. The Close is one of their case studies, making sure their male workforce is seen and known, be it on the website, in the community, or generally across the sector. They feature Curado Group. They have the male eye care ambassadors to spread the word far and wide, both internally and externally. And as Amanda mentioned, I couldn't miss out probably one of the best recruitment campaigns I've ever seen online. It's technically not even a recruitment campaign. Many of you will have seen it, but if you haven't, definitely go and check out Ben McIntosh's page on TikTok, and take note for your marketing campaigns. So Ben supports Zach, and in just one of his videos, which I've got a screenshot on screen for you, he talks about all the great things that he wished he knew about before being a support worker. So it showcases him and Zach at the gym, singing karaoke, swimming, cooking, golfing, so much more. And there's so many videos on his page. And it really shows the best of being a support worker. So as I say, check it out. And if you can encourage some of your care and support workers to get involved, whether that be on TikTok. We're not great as a sector sharing media via TikTok. Hey, I'm not the best on it either. But if you find people in your organizations that do TikTok, get them to be involved, get them to share some of your stories, some of the fun things that happen in your different settings, and bring it to life for the generation that use it as well as men, which we've provided an example for here today. And of course, we're not the only sector with a gender imbalance, are we? If we look at sectors like construction, which is predominantly male biased, they've only got 16% in their sector that are female. So similar numbers, just flipped. So we can look to these sectors, see what they're doing to attract more women, and apply their methods to our underrepresented groups. You may have come across Go Construct, great website supported by the Construction Industry Training Board levy. It's funded by employers in the sector. Yeah, slightly different to perhaps what we have at our avail, but there's some great tools on that site. Employer specific, one example on screen, Bellway, whose career site has absolutely an equal balance of gender imagery, very specific content aimed at women. So, for example, they've got articles on breaking down barriers, laying the foundations, as they like to say, for women to have successful and rewarding careers in construction. Does your website do the same for men? coming to your site? Does it explain what that looks like for somebody wanting to consider working in care? Go away and have a look at your own websites and see if you can answer that question with a yes. Okay, next we're on to data surrounding age. As we've explored already, we're not only an aging population, we're an older workforce, and remember the average age is 45, almost a third of 55 plus. And in our data set, the largest application pool is actually younger. So we actually report large application pools from those between 25 and 29 at almost a quarter. And if we look at applicants under 30, it's actually 40%. Some promising stats there. And if we go to that interview stage, very similar, slight increase there, but around that 40% mark make it through to that stage. This is where the data gets a bit concerning. When we look at who shows up for interview, God, we love talking about this as a sector, don't we? People who just don't turn up, people who ghost us. It's happening much more these days, isn't it? And yeah, over half of those people are under 30. So 51% are not going to turn up for interview. The majority of that pool is under 25. And this is, I've got to say this because I stand by what we do at Cohesion, in that we literally couldn't add greater engagement tactics into our recruitment process. Some of our recruiters are on the call today, and they'll know that we literally deploy engagement in person, AI, texts, emails, every point in the recruitment process. And despite us doing that, that there is still no show activity. And perhaps timely, you may have come across an article recently. It did hit mainstream media, and it was based on data captured by Indeed, and according to them, a staggering 93% of Gen Zers admitted to ghosting interviews, and nearly half as many hadn't turned up for their first day at work, which is perhaps even more concerning. Now, thankfully, our data doesn't reflect the severity of that report. If it did, I'd probably be questioning if we were in the right job, but we don't. That's good. Across the board, so not looking at age demographics or any demographics here, we tend to report 70–80% interview attendance across the board, despite all those touch points I was talking about. Yeah, whether that be through calls, text messages, automated chat AI intervention. Sounds a bit fancy, doesn't it? But one of the things that's worked really well for us is deploying a conversation ahead of interview that guides the candidate through the ID they need to take to interview for right to work and DBS checks. And by putting that in place, we've seen a really positive impact on candidates showing up to interview with that ID that's needed, which means that the minute somebody's offered, we've got the right ID, so we can get that DBS check in, we can get those right to work checks completed really, really quickly. And I'm sure you're all on the same page with us in terms of getting those compliance checks completed as quickly as possible. So even though we are seeing much more higher ghosting activity in today's workplace, for this particular data set, we're actually seeing the most offers made to 16 to 24s, which is great, 23%. So I guess if I reflect, we might need to book more interviews with under 25s, but when we do, and when they go, we're actually seeing really promising results. And let's not forget, if we keep recruiting our typical age demographic, we're going to be in a much more difficult state 10, 15, 20 years down the line. So we really need to start encouraging that lower, younger cohort coming in. And again, the key is also about supporting them once they're in role. There are external reports supporting our views. Just mentioned some of this. Number of 50 to 64s have fallen in the workplace. Over the over 50s that are made redundant find it really difficult to change career and find opportunities. So maybe an opportunity there if we're engaging and if we're supporting in the right ways. So what are others doing to target when it comes to age demographics? I'm going to bring Amanda back in at this stage to share some of that with you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. Thanks. So what they're doing is targeting parents, and that's something we should all be doing. If you look at most big corporate websites and the early career pages, there are FAQs there for parents. So certainly suggest that you have them on your career pages and use the power of recommendations, and ask your younger applicants, you know, in the recruitment process and those in your workforce, what do or what did their parents think? We need to be myth busting about the opportunities that exist in the sector. Perception is one of our biggest challenges. I'm mindful that if you look at the NHS and you look at social care is by far the bigger workforce, and yet the NHS is the preferred destination if you speak to lots of young people and their parents. Vic, the CEO at National Care Forum, has said many a time in a room where I've heard her that we need a soap opera, we need some TV shows that really show what a great place social care is to work. And so, you know, others are engaging with young people at school, at college, at university. I would also suggest social care are incredibly underrepresented. In fact, I think there is one member from social care in the Institute of Student Employers, which is a membership organisation for early careers and the further education sector. So most of the larger recruiters of apprenticeships, graduates, school leaver programs, etc., as well as FE colleges, schools and universities are all members. And just to give you a flavour, and I promise I'm not on their payroll, if you're a charity, it's about £500 to join. If you're not, it's about £1,000 for your dues for the year. And that gives you access to data, industry reports, training, the latest best practice, as well as a network that spans all UK industry. Check out their website at the very least, and I suspect you'll find really interesting and useful things on there. And use your younger employees to be pioneers for you on a mission to find more people like them. If I think about, again, you know, what's happening in other industries, last year's cohort, it's quite normal for them to recruit the next intake in terms of, not in terms of decision making, but in terms of engaging, supporting, intervening, and attracting. And you know, we need to be shaping content and comms. So I guess a challenge is for everyone, have a look at your ads. If you have the same copy for every similar role in every location, I would suggest, you know, what other people are doing, focus it on your audience, shape that content, shape how you're communicating, make it more mobile friendly, talk about your EDI policy. It's what young people want to hear about. And use video content, just to name a few. These are all things that are deployed to you know, a really extensive degree in other industries. So what are others doing to target older people? More of the boomer generation are looking for flexibility than any other demographic group. Now, everyone wants more flexibility nowadays, but I found that really interesting. Again, I read that in the Demos report, which was in partnership with Anchor. So there is a really big opportunity there, you know, to rewrite and refocus what you're doing to target older people, and really, you know, whilst you'll talk about EDI for Gen Z, talk about flexibility for older people. There are currently 800,000 older people out of work who want a job, and the number of older workers has fallen. So we talked about that discrimination. We talked about how more difficult it is over the age of 50. The number of older workers has fallen by nearly 200,000 since 2019, 182,000. So some examples of people that are using specific strategies to engage, attract and retain out of social care would be Aviva, Boots, B&Q, National Express, Next and Sainsbury's. These organizations are all top employers in their space, and you know they specifically target people from other walks of life and sell that flexibility, the lower stress and part-time working for that tranche of older workers who perhaps have retired early, perhaps don't need to work full-time, or perhaps just want a different and better work-life pattern. So check them out, they can definitely help. And in terms of in-sector, Anchor are doing excellent work. So they commissioned the report with Demos, the Platinum Pound. It is absolutely worth a read. There's some really good recommendations to government in there, but also some that we can take in terms of recruitments. So they have an age-friendly employment pledge, which you can find more details on their website. And they suggest reviewing, do you have age-friendly policies? How do you keep your workforce healthy? How do you offer flexible working and enable people to perhaps work longer with you before retiring? Do you have policies to transition from perhaps full-time to part-time, or maybe just shaving off a day or two here? So there are a lot of options there. You can target older workers from other industries and review how you can keep the older workers that you have now. But I'm going to hand back to Dave now to share what we're seeing with diversity.
Thanks, Amanda.
Disability. Sorry, Dave.
Thank you. No, that's great. So as we have already shared today, 2% of the social care workforce consider themselves to have a disability. There's some more data on the screen, but as Amanda has mentioned, doesn't quite cover all areas that we would like to see. And of course, we need to acknowledge that this could be really wide-ranging. So no specifics around neurodiversity, adults with learning disabilities, etc. So in our data set, around 5% of the pool at some point in the process have declared a disability. And this ranges from 3% at application, 5% at interview, and 4% starting in post. What can we consider? Well, some of you will be familiar with schemes that already exist out there, such as the Disability Confidence Scheme. This is all about helping employers make the most of the opportunities provided by employing disabled people. We're signed up at Cohesion. Would definitely recommend you taking a look into the scheme if you haven't already. 1 in 7 people in the UK identify as neurodivergent, so autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, or other neurological conditions. And there are some excellent examples of employers working really hard to ensure that their processes are accessible and supports and that adjustments that are made are meaningful, which is allowing them to diversify in this space. So what are they doing? Well, a few examples we've come across. We've got Harry Specters, who are a chocolate factory. It sounds exciting, doesn't it? And their business was set up 10 years ago by a couple to help their autistic son learn about the world of work. They've grown into a thriving social enterprise. The majority of their workforce are autistic. They offer free work experience to hundreds of youngsters with the condition. And what works great is that the role of chocolate making is based on routine, on structure. It's calming. It's quite repetitive. And one of their recruits, who they talk about in the article, who joined, was really shy, didn't want to talk when they arrived, and they've really developed in that area, and they're actually now their company's data analysts, which I think is just fantastic. We've also featured MenCap on the slides. They do a lot around access to work programs, supporting those with disabilities and learning disabilities into meaningful work. They offer one-to-one job coaching, which is really successful. Also citing Beyond Autism, They're working with the City Bridge Foundation to upskill people in their own schools. They've got some great employability toolkits available. If you check out the website, their internship program for autistic individuals gives real work experience and allows people to learn new skills across different departments within their organisation. They get support from job coaches and mentors, and they work in both care settings and wider support departments too. The Big Table Group, their brands include Bella Italia, Cafe Rouge. They put diversity, equity, and inclusion a key feature of their what they call ESG agenda, I guess, their environment, social and governance agenda. One of their values is respect everyone. So they survey employees to ensure that everybody has a really inclusive culture. It allows them to make better DE&I decisions. They celebrate events all throughout the year that are important to different employee groups. They have a team of volunteers to drive certain initiatives. One example, my colleague Debbie, who is our early talent director, was talking to me about the other day, was they have a neurodivergent friendly group who have looked at what can we do to our menus in our restaurants? So making them more visually pleasing, whether that be posters or menus. So not just in recruitment practice, but all parts of their organisation. What can they put in place to help neurodivergent groups? So yeah, some areas we can consider for sure within social care too. Some of you may have seen, again, a pretty recent article about autistic people being held back by recruitment processes. Lengthy application forms, something we still see to this day, even though we were talking about it 10, 15 years ago. Your application forms, we've got even better technology these days. We've got one-click apply processes. We don't even use application forms up front at Cohesion. We collect the information when we need it. So as an example, we obviously all need the full employment timeline for people that we are all recruiting. We do this over the phone at the point of offer. And you can use technology to support that process as well. But we certainly don't ask it ahead of interview. Amanda mentioned sharing interview questions up front. Which is, I guess, a great suggestion. We perhaps don't need to be giving any candidates everything up front, but there are definitely tools that can give people in our processes a better experience. So tools like Care Character, if you haven't come across it, give guidance before an interview, gives them top tips to think about based on 7 qualities of care. So looking at supportive tools and those reasonable adjustments is really important. Regarding that article on the left from the BBC, if you check out the Buckland report, there's some more recommendations in this area. And despite all of this, we're seeing some great positive stories shared across social care. HFT, a recent LinkedIn post about success stories, so people with Down syndrome at the Palace of Westminster. So more of this, we need to be talking about it and sharing it more. So on to some summaries, I guess, of our recommendations that we hope you've taken away from today's session. Number 1, look at your data. Who are they? Where do underrepresented groups drop out? How do we intervene? Positive interventions to offer an equitable process is definitely key in our eyes. For men, showcasing roles in different settings, whether it be tempting people back who have left, retirees, bringing them back on our bank, myth busting, over 50s men, I think the stat is, who've been made redundant are a really, really good target area in particular. Number 2, future-proof now. We can't wait. And the behaviour of Gen Z, it's only going to continue as they get older. So adapt your processes now. Be targeted with your attraction. So where do your workforce hang out, both online and offline? Craft your messages to reflect what your audience want to know. Communicate how they want to be communicated with. talked about not being one size fitting all. Flexibility. I'm just going to leave that word there because we talk about it a lot, but it is something that that we need to improve across our sector. Share good news stories via social media channels within your communities, on review sites. Look at your imagery, look at your videos that need to include those underrepresented groups. So help people to see people like them within your organisation. And there are specific initiatives that can make for really great targeted attraction. I know we have one of our attendees. I can see that that he's with us today. So I'm not going to embarrass you, Travis, but Travis Thomas, who is head of recruitment from NSSL, so Next Step Supported Living. Travis is doing some great work with local education providers. He's had some great success with the Restart programme. So this is the government scheme to help the long-term unemployed get training and back into work. He shared with me, and I know he'd be happy to share with others, that people hired from that scheme are demonstrating great loyalty, great dedication to the job. They've spent time retraining. They're really emotionally and mentally invested into their career and care. But he's also been very, very honest in some of the challenges that they faced along the way. I think one of them, Travis, that you mentioned was that young people have needed more support around understanding professional boundaries, for example. So yes, there are things to consider and support areas you do need to consider. I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, but if you want to hear more about the great work that Travis and his team are doing at NSSL, drop me a note, drop me a message, and we'd be happy to make a connection so that you can find out more.
Yeah, Dave, if I can just interject there. With any of the programs that we're doing, if anybody here does want any of the information with what we're doing, I'm more than happy to share with anyone and everyone, because the more we get it out, the better it will be for the industry and for all of us, really. I think one of the biggest issues we've had as an industry is we're all separate companies and very insular, and I think we need to get more sharing going on one side. Everything that I've got, it's not proprietary. I'm more than happy to go through the pitfalls, the positives, and if there's any documentation forms, things like that we've developed as we've gone along with any of our programs, from diversity and recruitment to education, it's freely available to anyone who requests it.
Thanks, Travis. Travis, why don't you put your contact details in the chat for everyone?
I'll get on to that now.
Okay, perfect. Right, over to me, I think, Dave, for the last few recommendations. So
Please.
Number 4 is give them a reason to show up. You know, give a bit more leniency. Do we just accept that young people may not show up? So our top tip, we've spoken to providers about different things that they're doing. One organisation in my network, we agreed during a brainstorming session that they were going to give a voucher to everyone that turned up for interview for a vegan sausage roll from Greggs, which is under £2. So great PR, something that quite a lot of people seem to love at the moment. Now, you shouldn't have to, and I can't see your faces, and I suspect there's a couple of eye rolls, but these are the tactics that are having an impact, and do engage with local further education, higher education communities, offer meaningful part-time work to students and young people. I suspect, and we don't have time for it today, but if we did a show of hands or all told each other where we worked when we were studying, if we did, very, very few of us would have worked in a social care setting. You know, what we tend to find, you know, our competition is McDonald's. McDonald's will have you. They'll give you flexibility. They'll train you. They'll give you progression. They'll tell you where you can get to. They'll talk to you about careers in the fast food industry and how you can own your own business. All of that stands true for social care. We can make that happen. And if we get that positive pass through, even just with students who are studying health and social care, health or allied healthcare, we could have 3, 4, 5, even 6 years of work now, even if social care isn't their final destination. And while at the same time, we can start bringing down some of that high agency spend that we hear about. And our last recommendation, work hard to engage with your local community. Activities like Care Home Open Week, last week in June this year, is an excellent opportunity to host events, to invite people in to see the wonderful people you support, the amazing teams that you have working for you, and the opportunities that you might have. Develop relationships with relevant organizations in your local area. It does bear fruit. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our session today. So really hope that it's been helpful in validating current best practice and highlighting actions that you can move forward and areas of opportunity. Because if we don't start injecting more diversity into the workforce now, things will only get harder in the years to come. So if you'd like to continue the conversation with us individually, drop us a message. We're happy to do that. I did have a quick peek at the chat, and we've got a very shy group today, Dave. So I didn't see any questions. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Okay, well then, before we finish, I'm going to say thanks again for attending, and mine and Dave's contact details are on the screen. And there's a lot of resources on our website in terms of blogs that reference different things, but in particular, our white papers, a selection of which you can see there.